Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon and today I am back to tell you about a new favourite book. Now before I do, I just want to mention that you may occasionally hear some flute practice going on. It's not me, it's not in this house, I've got the windows open and I think we're having a bit of a teenage phase on the street where quite a few of the young kids are kind of getting to that secondary school age and older, and so we've had quite a few parties recently. There's quite a lot of sports going on in the gardens at some point, and now we've got flute practice, which is very exciting. I always wanted to play the flute. No, I always wanted to play the flute and never did, so I'm actually feeling quite jealous. Every so often, if you see me just sort of doing that, it's because I'm going along with the flute, because it's there in the background somewhere, unless it's in my head because I haven't heard it since. There we go. There is a little bit. I wonder if it's the retired nuns across the way. I wonder if they've taken up the flute. There's me blaming it on the teenagers. It could be all the raucous hijinks going on across the way with the nuns. Anyway, I'm going to tell you about a new favourite book. Now, I realised when I was looking at my favourites of the year so far, as I'll be doing that video in a week or two, I have actually not done it that much as in terms of making videos about my favourite books, and I've realised I think it only happens when a book kind of has that instant favourite feel. A lot of the books that are in my sort of top 10, let's say top 12 because I think it's going to be top 12, have either grown on me or actually I've been reading them for other vlogs or things, so I feel like I've sort of documented them in their own way. Maybe there's only one I can think of, The Poison My Bible, that I haven't made a whole video about, and maybe that's something I can do in hindsight, maybe not. I don't know. Would you like them in hindsight? Let me know. Would you like me to even just do videos where I talk about favourites from the past and like dedicate like a whole video to 1 or 3 or 5? So the book that is a new favourite of mine is a book that I found in Gaze the Word back in June when I was there with my mum, and I have to admit I've been in a bit of a book slump, full stop. I wasn't really that bothered by being in bookshops, which I know. Nothing was really grabbing me. I think Gaze the Wood was our third bookshop of the day. I was thrilled to take mum there finally because she hadn't been before. I saw this and it's an author that I had heard of before. However, the premise well, the cover grabbed me first, then the premise. Then when I was reading about the author in more detail, I was like, oh my goodness, they sound just like my kind of thing. The author was born in Ireland, moved to Trinidad, and now lives in Canada and has been up for the Giller Prize, and I'm getting into all things Canadian this year. The book is actually set in the Caribbean. Anyway, I was intrigued by the author. The cover, I was like, oh my god, that looks amazing. And then I read the first line of the blurb and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to read that now. It says, everyone thinks Marla is a murderer, and that reminded me of a previous favourite book of this year that I did a whole video on, which was The Bandit Queens by Perini Schroff. And so it was one of the things where I was like, oh, this just is giving me the feels. Now it's actually in many ways nothing like that book, although it does deal with some similar themes. Anyway, I've been talking for nearly 4 minutes and I've not told you what the book is because I'm an absolute book tease. The book is Cereus Blooms at Night by Shani Mutu, and this was actually also I have a book club on Patreon, and this was our book club pick, and I just loved this. You know, I was talking in my, not last video, was it the last video, the one before, when I was talking about summary reads. I mean, you might not have watched it. I shouldn't assume that you watch every single video. How dare I, naughty? In that video, I was talking about how I wanted to find some summer gothic books, and this had kind of given me that urge, but I didn't want to talk about it then. I want to talk about it now. This is, like I said, set in the Caribbean, and we meet Tyler, who is a nurse and who is going to be looking after a woman that he's heard things about called Marla. And Marla is going to be in this, it's not really a care home, but it sort of is. It's not quite a hospital either, but she's coming there because people believe she is a murderer but shouldn't go to prison because she is mad and therefore needs to be somewhere else instead. And so Tyler starts looking after her from there, and through piecing together what her story is from the rumours he's heard from some of his family members, and what's the name of one of his grands? One of his grands has got an absolutely amazing name, Cigarette Smoking Nana. He is all about the rumours about Marla and the family that she came from and her father, and what then sort of unravels is a tale with many a twist in it. It's really gothic in parts. There's lots of surprises that come up, and I'm really hesitant to say too much, but I think I can say Marla and her sister are abandoned by her mother. The reason that they're abandoned, I won't spoil, but it's took me by surprise actually. They are left with their father. Their father is an alcoholic and does not deal with being left particularly well, and there is some very difficult parts to read about how he treats his daughters after their mother has left, and it's all about how Marla looks after Asha and protects her. As it goes on, the book also goes in lots of sort of almost different timelines, in the fact that first of all we get this sort of unravelling of Marla's story from cigarette smoking Nana. The first bit feels like a almost Victorian kind of sensation novel, as we find out about Marla's parents and how they got together and the complexities around all of that, and then why her mother leaves. Then we go into this, I don't want to say Dickensian because I haven't read enough of Dickens, but there is a sort of sliver of Dickensian, I guess, in terms of Marla as this young girl having to kind of fend for herself and her sister, but also try and become the woman of the household when she's very, very young. Then we also get, in another section, how do I put this? It's really hard to say. Basically, the next section is when Marla is at the home, two people come into her life, one of who she knew as a child, and we get the story of what happened to them and why they didn't speak for so long. And there's a wonderful thread of magical realism about this character who goes to sleep for a month and then will wake up and kind of eat everything and get his son to go and deliver food to the crazy woman up the road. And that's all brilliantly done. And then the sort of final few sections are the, well, kind of the big gothic twist, and also the how everything settles. And I thought, without any spoilers, the ending was really kind of brilliant. Well, it was brilliant, not kind of, it was. So that's kind of the plot. The characters in this are so wonderful. There is so much great representation of LGBTQIA plus characters within here. Again, I don't want to say too much, but I do think this came out in 1996. Also, it doesn't say anywhere on here that it was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. This was released in 1996, and I think it was way ahead of its time in terms of how it looks at gender, particularly of two characters who are working out their genders, and the way their stories are written are so beautifully done and so full of hope and love that, I mean, it could get me. There's one particular scene between a mother and her child that is so, in fact there's two scenes between the mother and their child that are so moving and incredible. Like, I wish everyone could be that kind, just have that much warmth and openness in their heart to just accept whoever for whatever they are. That's a real theme within this, because it is about acceptance, but also accepting our secrets, our past, the dark parts of us, who we are as people and how our history has formed us. All of that is in here too. Marla is a fantastic, complex character. There's also something really brilliantly done. Well, this book looks at trauma in a few ways. One, in, like I said, the man who sleeps for a month at a time and why that is. Also, we have this really interesting element where Marla and her, well, the child version of her interact in some kind of way. The child version of her is Popo, and we learn about why she doesn't want anyone to call her that and why she reacts to that, and also why she keeps referring to animals and stuff and trying to care for them as Popo, and that's all linked in with trauma. The other thing that I loved about this book, and it's something that I'm realising that I'm becoming a real fan of in fiction, is the nature writing in here. And this is not just the beauty and wonder of nature that's celebrated. This also embraces and celebrates the darker side of nature. This is all about the insects. It's about the snails. There's a lot of stuff about snails in here. And also through that, there's like myths and legends of the Caribbean sort of mixed into this wonderful concoction of delight that this book is. There's also a lot about Ceres, which is a cactus that blooms at night and has this sort of power to it. Now, I couldn't work out whether it really smelled funny or whether it was something around it that smelled really funny, but it looks at that and how like sometimes beautiful things can be quite ugly and off-putting, but sometimes off-putting and ugly things can be beautiful in their own way. It looks at that in quite a lot of detail, and also like how the rotting and decay of nature is quite an incredible thing in itself and should be embraced more, along with insects and snails and things. It can't just be about what's beautiful and colourful and wonderful in the sunniest of days. It's about the beauty through all aspects of life, even things coming to the end of their life. And yeah, there's all of that going on. And as you go on, the atmosphere in here is just incredible. You know that there are awful things coming, but also even when some of the awful things happen, which I think is what I should mention, that Shani writes. So I will say towards the end, there's a few moments of violence where I was like, wow, that is intense. And it almost kind of broke the spell for me. There's also a description of sex that's one sentence that I think the editors should have really cut out, because you know, sex is a very difficult thing, I think, for people to write about without it becoming cliched or mechanical or over the top or a bit icky, or, you know. And there's just one line that I thought, oh, somebody should have nipped that one in the bud. That sounds like a euphemism. It's not meant to. Somebody should have cut that bit out, because it just almost broke the spell, but it didn't. Generally, things are described very quickly and quite bluntly without too much description, so it never feels voyeuristic, but also actually it's left to linger in your mind, which can, I think, often be quite a lot worse, because your mind conjures all sorts of things up rather than reading it when it's kind of described to you, and then, I don't know, it can feel again clinical or voyeuristic or deeply uncomfortable. And this book is uncomfortable in parts, but I like a book that makes me feel uncomfortable. I think the ability of books to make you feel uncomfort when you're sat somewhere cozy reading, wherever that might be, is really powerful, and it gets us to look at the darker elements of life and experiences that have happened to people in real life, but through fiction, in a really powerful and important way. I hate calling things important because it always sounds a little bit cliche, but also like a bit, I don't know, that. I think Shani Muti writes about those things really definitely. I mean, this was her debut novel, and I'm about to do another cliche in terms of book reviews, I guess, in saying I could not believe this was a debut. It felt so, just so constrained, yet vivid, yet powerful, yet epic, yet really intricate, and quite, in some ways, you're very close to all of these characters and it can feel almost claustrophobic at points. But at the same time, there's all this beauty in the decay and rotting of nature, as well as celebrating human nature in all of its forms, but also looking at the perils of human nature. This book is just brimming. It's brimming with so much. And I cried at the end of this book, in part just because I found it so moving, but also because I genuinely did not want to let these characters go. I did not want this book to end. I was just completely and utterly transfixed by it, and I'm just, yeah, I always feel like when I do these videos I've done a really bad job of explaining why I think a book is brilliant, but this is brilliant, and I really want everyone to read it if you haven't already. And like I said, I'd heard of Shani Muti before, actually because of Kieran over at KD Books, because I think he raved about Polar Vortex a few years ago, which is her latest novel. It's in this really interesting size, this. Isn't that cool? Also, I have Moving Forward Sideways Like a Crab, which I think also looks at queer life. So there we go. Also, I should say, in book club we had an amazing chat about this, and I think we were all agreed that it's definitely the best book we've read as a group so far this year. I don't know if for anyone else it was one of their favourite books of the year, but it certainly was mine, and you will see this somewhere in the top 12 of my favourite books of 2023 so far, where I'm not going to tell you because I want you to watch that video when it arrives in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, it will definitely be on there. And if you do want to join our Patreon book club, it's lovely. My mum's been a few times, she loves it, and she may well appear again. I think Pip's going to appear at some point, and Chris is too. It's always linked down below, along with my Instagram, my Twitter, my threads, because I'm threading away now, because who isn't? Well, quite a lot of people aren't, but quite a lot of people are. Our next pick will be The Summer Without Men by Siri Husbet, which I'm really looking forward to chatting with everyone on the 2nd of August. Benjamin of Benjamin's Journal absolutely loved it, and that made me really want to read it. In fact, I talked about this in my summer book recommendations in TBR, because it's on my TBR and I'm definitely going to be reading it, and this I think will urge me on to maybe do a reading vlog of books with summer in the title. So there we go. I hope you're all doing super duper well, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye.